Basil of Baker Street by Eve Titus. Chapter 1. Basil the Super Sleuth. The mystery of the missing twins could never have been solved by an ordinary detective. But Basil, of course, was far from ordinary. Even before the kidnapper's note came, his keen mind had deducted what the criminals really wanted. "Mark my words," he told me. "The disappearance of Angela and Agatha is only the beginning. The criminals plan to strike at us all." He was quite right. But there was a long and dangerous road to be travelled before the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Who masterminded the plot? What was the motive behind it? How were the twins lured away? And Basil, what sort of sleuth was he? To make these matters clear, I shall tell you something of his amazing career as a detective, and then relate the events leading up to the crime. The place is London, in the year 1885. Pray allow me to introduce myself. I am Dr. David Q. Dawson, Basil's close friend and associate. Basil was as famous a detective in our world as was Mr. Sherlock Holmes in the world of people. This came about because he studied at the feet of Mr. Holmes himself, visiting him regularly in his rooms at Baker Street, number 221B. I usually went along. We would scurry up to the sitting room shared by Sherlock and Dr. John H. Watson. Well hidden, we would then listen closely as Mr. Holmes told his friend exactly how he solved his cases. Thus Basil learned the scientific side of sleuthing from the best teacher of them all. Mr. Holmes was tall and thin, with sharp, piercing eyes, and if ever a mouse may be said to resemble a man, then Basil was the mouse. He even dressed like his hero, thanks to a clever little tailor who copied Sherlock's wardrobe almost exactly. But the long trips to Baker Street in all sorts of weather were tiring and often risky. We braved many a blizzard to reach our goal. One evening, leaving by the way of the cellar, Basil stopped so suddenly that I almost bumped into him. "Observe, my dear doctor," he remarked, pointing with his walking stick. "Observe how clean and spacious is this cellar. What a far cry from our crowded, dingy dwellings in the East End." His eyes lit up. "We could build a town here. Picture a row of cosy flats on that empty shelf next to the front window, plus shops, a school, a library, a town hall, and other buildings. A name for the town? Ah, I have it. Holmesstead." "A brilliant idea, Basil. Best of all, we could steal upstairs to listen to our beloved Sherlock as often as we pleased." "Precisely," said my companion, smiling. "We shall put it to the vote at our next town hall meeting." The 44 families in our community approved. Basil drew up the plans. Carpenters travelled to Baker Street night after night, working at breakneck speed, and within 2 weeks the move was made. Holmesstead was a model town, and mice from all over London came to look and to marvel. The flat Basil and I shared fronted the street, so that we could see our callers before they entered, just as Mr. Holmes did. Basil listened long and often to the master, and it soon seemed as though there were no mystery too tangled for him to unravel. Mice journeyed long distances to consult him, even French mice from across the Channel. Rich or poor, no one in need of help was ever turned from his door. He brought so many criminals to justice that evildoers trembled at the mere mention of his name. Then, but 1 month after we had moved to Baker Street, the strangest case of Basil's career began. Angela and Agatha, our neighbours' young twins, vanished into thin air. Chapter 2. Where are the twins? When the twins' parents came to our rooms late at night, seeking Basil's help, we were upstairs. Unnoticed, we sat in our favourite corner, listening with deep interest. Mr. Holmes was telling Dr. Watson in detail exactly how he had solved a jewel burglary that had completely baffled Scotland Yard. Basil whipped out his notebook and jotted down every word, scribbling rapidly in shorthand, or perhaps I should say shortpaw.
"What sheer genius!"
he whispered.
"What a brain! That man will become a legend. His fame has spread to the far corners of the earth."
"You are something of a legend yourself," said I.
"Perhaps, Dawson, but I still have much to learn. What an honour it is to study under Sherlock Holmes."
To which I answered, "And what an honour for me to be associated with the Sherlock Holmes of the mouse world." Basil bowed modestly and resumed taking notes. About an hour or so later, Mr. Holmes took his violin from its case. He put a new E string in the instrument, discarding the old one in the wastebasket. Then he lifted his bow and dashed off a piece of Paganini. We were all ears, for he played it magnificently.
"Bravo!"
squeaked Basil, quite carried away. Next we heard a Mendelssohn piece requested by Dr. Watson, after which the two men retired to their bedrooms. Basil took the E-string from the basket, and we scurried silently across the floor to our secret passageway. I should mention here that my friend had made one very strict rule when we moved to Baker Street. The rule was laid down because he did not wish to risk disturbing his hero in any way whatsoever. It stated that only Basil and myself were allowed upstairs. No other mouse was even to venture near our passageway. It was therefore with great surprise that we saw someone hurrying to meet us. It was Mrs. Judson, our mousekeeper. She was considerably upset.
"Oh, Mr. Basil!"
she wailed.
"I know I'm breaking the rule, but this is an emergency. The Proudfords, your neighbours, have been waiting in your rooms for an hour, and Mrs. Proudford hasn't stopped crying since the moment she came. I just had to fetch you."
"Pray calm yourself and tell us what has occurred," said Basil kindly.
"Angela and Agatha have disappeared."
"That's odd," I remarked. "However, the twins are known to be mischievous. No doubt it is a childish prank of some sort."
"I hardly think so," said Basil. "The hour is far too late for that. It bears looking into. Let's hurry our steps a bit."
Mrs. Judson's apron strings bobbed back and forth as she ran on ahead, and in a matter of minutes we reached our rooms. I was shocked by the change in Mrs. Proudfoot. She was an attractive white mouse who usually looked gay and youthful. Now her red-rimmed eyes and tear-swollen face made her seem years older. As Basil strode into the sitting-room, she sprang from her chair and clutched at his lapels.
"Our twins are missing. They vanished on their way home from school. What dreadful thing could have happened to them? A mousetrap, perhaps? Oh, my poor dears, where can they be?"
She sank back on the sofa, sobbing. I took a bottle of smelling salts from my little black bag and waved it under her nose. The father stood silently by, with a look of extreme suffering on his face. Basil opened his notebook. "Your wife is much too upset to talk. Will you tell me all you know?" Mr. Proudfoot braced himself.
"I shall try, sir. Angela and Agatha never return home from school later than 4 o'clock. Now it is past 11 at night, and we are at our wits' end. You know the twins are happy, contented children, and contented children do not run away from home."
"You are right on that point, Mr. Proudfoot. Have you questioned their schoolmates?"
Yes. They said the twins had planned to stop at the sweet shop on their way home from school. They do this often, for they have an especial fondness for chocolates. That's where most of their allowance goes. But when we spoke to the sweet shop proprietor, he said they hadn't arrived there this afternoon.
"Do you trust the proprietor?" asked Basil.
Mr. Hume is one of the most honest mice I know."
Then we can eliminate him as a suspect. One last question. What were the twins wearing?"
You'll have to ask my wife that."
"Pretty pink pinafores,"
said Mrs. Proudfoot tearfully.
"My precious darlings always look so sweet in pink, with their little white faces."
Basil patted her shoulder. "I can offer you only crumbs of comfort now, but rest assured that I shall do all in my power to restore your twins to you. For your own sake, go home and try and get some sleep." She leaned heavily on her husband as they walked to the door. Mr. Proudfoot turned around.
"You are the only one who can help us. You will find them, won't you?"
"My investigations begin at once," replied the detective. "I hope to have news soon. Good news." As soon as they had gone, he said, "My first step in the mystery of the missing twins will be to hunt for clues. Come along, my dear doctor, and bring a candlestick. We're off to the sweet shop." Thank you for listening to Grandad Ork. You can hear more stories by going to the Grandad Ork channel, and if you want to hear stories read back to back, then have a look in the playlists. If you subscribe to the channel, then you'll know when a new one is ready. The books are available in most high street stores, libraries, and there are links to some online sellers in the description below if you don't have a copy. So, until next time, bye for now.